Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. Today, we're joining you from SpongeBob SquarePants' New Year's Eve party. He didn't promise it's going till midnight, I'm just warning you.
Well, I mean, he's already gone to bed.
They don't know how to but they are going to pull. They bought a whole bunch of cases of the the plastic bubble wrap stuff, and we're going to get to pop those later. It's going to be really good.
It's okay. I have a lovely calamari sauce.
Okay. Anyway, whatever. Let's just move it along. That's not the way to close out the year.
No, it's really not. But I mean, hey, that's par for the course here.
It's the best I could come up with. Anyway, welcome to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and our Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass.
You know what's nice about SpongeBob? Built-in cleanup after New Year's Eve.
There you go, just flush and
well, he is porous.
Flush and clean. So, all right. Anyway, don't try to salvage it, Max. It was one of my worst locations ever, but I appreciate the effort. Hey, we're gonna have a little discussion. I don't know. I don't think this is hating. I think this is just more of us observing geek culture, the MCU in particular. Brandon, you had a really good, I think, a good conversation that we're going to just unpack. All about what we would have done in MCU.
We got to give credit where credit is due. As much as I would love to be able to take credit for this completely, I read this over on Newsrama. It was James Osborne is one of the editorial writers over there. And he pointed something out, and it just got my brain going. It's like, we talked about this when it happened. And
we talked about this years ago.
Marvel could have had so much material if they had focused the phase after Endgame and all that on the Blip fallout.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about that. I think that was a total missed opportunity. Yeah. So, but you guys, none of us want to discuss this, but we have to. It's our duty. I never really thought we would have this conversation, but boy, did we lost a friend, we lost a legend, we lost it was stunning news, you guys, and we just have to say, we have some terrible news to deliver. Our good buddy, Mr. Robert, head of the Daycare Kids Empire, just passed away. Peacefully in his sleep, thank goodness. But what a legend! Yeah. And I mean, if you go to especially the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention, but if you're part of the convention scene or the geek scene,
the collector community here in town, everybody knew Mr. Robert.
Yeah.
He's been on our show many times, but everybody has a Mr. Robert story, and it's always interesting. You're like, wow, he did that. He would, I told him years ago. I sort of refer to him as the Mother Teresa of West Memphis. He just does good for people, and he doesn't make a big show of it.
He's left behind a tremendous set of boots to fill, and it's not going to be easy for any of us going forward. But we can take inspiration for the things he did, and just try to live a little better than we did before.
We just saw him at the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention. I mean, there was no indication to me. I don't know. He looked pretty good. He seemed peaceful. I don't know, man. He is such a huge part of what we do. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what it's good. I guess we have time to think about it, but man, we definitely need it. Well, they're keeping it going, right? They're keeping the empire going.
The Daycare Kids Comics, Toys, and Antiquities shop is staying open. His oldest son Logan, and of course his younger son Wade. They'll keep the stores going for the time being, at least. We know that's going on. And our good friend Elvis, who does security for all our conventions, he's over there working, helping him out. And it's gonna be a massive adjustment to not see him when you walked in or run into him at the conventions, and he's lights up with a story to tell.
Right. Or he's always carrying some, my big thing whenever I'd run into him, he's like, look at this. And he pulls something out of his pocket. I'm like, okay, well, it looks like a rusty old coin to me. He's like, and then he gives you the whole story. And it turns out this thing's from like 400 years ago. And it was from the battle of such and such and whatever. It's who knows what it's even worth.
It's like, its value ranges anywhere between this and that. And
right.
And he goes, yep. And if you want it, you can get it at the Let's Make a Deal Daycare style.
Yeah.
He everything that he had, he would call me up and he'd go, so I'm going to send you a picture.
Yeah.
And then, he would send these teases to me, especially as we were getting closer to MCFC, of things he was bringing to put into the Let's Make a Deal giveaways.
Right.
And it's just, I'm not going to get another one of those phone calls or text messages.
I don't know though. Weasel, his son Weasel, that's his nickname.
I love Weasel.
He's
to
following
death,
in his footsteps, though. I mean, Mr. Robert, if you had to say one word that describes Mr. Robert's operating principle, it was karma. He was all about, now we should say
he paid
Mr.
everything.
He was a cancer survivor from years ago, and he told me, man, it changes your whole perspective when you survive something like that. And he goes, I'm going to devote the rest of my life to doing interesting things and helping people and just doing good. And he said, whenever you do that, man, karma pays you back. It just, and it always did.
It was not lip service. He backed it up. Mm-hmm. Every time you saw him, he was doing something, whether it be for the St. Jude kids. Of course, Hannah with her, with her cancer leukemia diagnosis, he went full on. It's like we're gonna raise money for this. They donate, like I said, they donate all the proceeds from Let's Make a Deal to St. Jude.
Sure.
He doesn't even count it. He just takes the bucket of money and hands it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he'd have gotten with Scott and I, Scott J. Carroll, and had actually commissioned us to make a special wine that his wife, who
because you make
him,
wine. That's
his
right.
His wife predeceased him by 2 years.
Yeah.
Miss Bertha's favorite Greek restaurant had this amazing beverage, and he had commissioned us to make that for their upcoming anniversary.
Right.
So, this has just been a huge shock to, as we love to say, a shock to the system all the way through the entire community.
You could do worse than to study his life and to. I mean, there really you could write books. You could make movies about Mr. Robert's life. I mean, and they may. There may be documentaries.
they might
I'm
as
sure.
well.
It could happen.
There is a huge contingent of kids over in West Memphis that most of society would have given up on, but Mr. Robert and Miss Bertha. And they all just,
Well, we're going to have a few parting thoughts about our good buddy, Mr. Robert, when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Freddy Krueger has nightmares about them. The Geek Patrol is back.
I wonder what that looks like, though. What is the nature of those nightmares? So,
I know what they look like.
Okay. Does he just see the show as it is?
You should.
That's enough for him.
Watch the last 30 seconds of the Dokken music video "Dream Warriors."
Okay.
It's kind of you'll see it.
Okay, sounds good. And welcome back to Geek Tank Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And later in the show, we're going to talk about what we think is a missed opportunity by the MCU. And if they would just let some fans like us be a part of the creative team, they'd probably still be doing really well, but whatever. So, but before we do that, we if you're just tuning in, we lost a good friend of ours, a legend, especially in the geek community and in particular the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention. Mr. Robert passed away peacefully this week in his sleep, and I'm glad for that. I mean, I'm glad it was peaceful, and everything. But what a shock! It was a literal shock. We all saw him just a month or so ago at the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention. But I'll tell you this: I remember the first time I met Mr. Robert. And if you don't know who Mr. Robert is, just go to I don't know, what should they go to Facebook and go to the Daycare Kids.
Look up the Daycare Kids
Facebook page.
It'll give you a history.
And Daycare Kids, Toys, Antiquities.
Comics, Toys, and Antiquities.
Over in West Memphis, which it's funny. You drive by the place, you're like, okay, I don't even know if I want to stop. But you go in, and it is like a treasure house. It is a whatever, but it's worth the trip there. And don't go there if you only have 5 minutes. You go there if you have an hour or two. Because
well, no, if you only have 5 minutes to stop in, just be prepared because you're going to have to call somebody and say, I'm going to be late.
Yeah, you're going to. It's like a treasure hunt when you go in there, and that's part of the fun. But when I first met him, I met him. I know exactly where I was. I was at ShadowCon in 2013, and by this time, Brandon, we had done our third Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention. And in one way, I was a street-hardened, cynical person. Whenever anybody would come up to me, and you know the conversation, you get it all the time. Hey, I'd like to get involved with your convention. I can do this, or this. And more than half the time, they dropped the ball. They either didn't show up or they whatever they promised.
They
never
overpromised and underdelivered. But Mr. Robert, he didn't ask for much. He just wanted a couple of hours in the smallest room we had to do something with his daycare kids group. And bit by bit, year by year, his operation at MCFC grew.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like you have this family member that just came out of nowhere that, it's like, and just by knowing him for a few minutes, it was like he'd known you for years.
Oh yeah, it was. But when I met him, I'm like, okay. He goes. I want to help the convention. I think what attracted him was the stuff we did with Geek 101. It was like, wow,
for the
this
kids.
is really unique. You're doing that, and I said, oh, thank you, and whatever. And he was really fun to talk to, and we had a good conversation. But I'm like, I always took it with a grain of salt. And then suddenly, as the months started coming, as we got closer to the convention, all of these things started happening where he was showing me the prizes he was going to give, and and I'm like, this guy's not kidding.
Yeah.
And this guy actually has the collectibles he's talking about. He'd show me a Wonder Woman comic from 1943 or something. I'm like, okay, this guy's the real deal.
I'm not trying to cast shade on any of our vendors, because our vendors are amazing. But you do hear a lot from some of the folks that deal in the same kind of merchandise that he does. Well, I got her this, and I'm going to bring her that, and it doesn't ever materialize. He comes in and he goes, well, let me show you something.
Yeah.
And he's showing you these things that are a holy grail to your own collection, and you're just like, okay, I have no problem buying raffle tickets for this giveaway. I have, and then you find out where the money's going, and you find out the kids he's helped and the outreach and what him and Miss Bertha have done for the youth of West Memphis.
Right.
And you couldn't help but want to get involved. And meanwhile, it all started with him wanting to get involved with us.
Well, and early on in that process, I went and visited him over in West Memphis, and I mean, he lived in a part of town. It was, it's the hood. Let's just put it that way. Yep. But what was interesting, he was driving around his neighborhood, and there was almost this, you could say, blast radius, a positive blast. You would go, okay, these are low income homes, but all the yards are cut. It's neat. The kids are respectful. They're walking around saying hello, yes sir, and it was it was really just, and they fed so many people in the neighborhood. They would come by and just basically give food and things. And that he demanded this, look, we're going to make our community better. And just the influence, you could see it just within the mile or a square mile or so wherever he lived. That's impressive, man. He's just, I don't know. He's a one-of-a-kind guy. I really hope there would be documentary. Somebody out there needs to make the definitive Mr. Robert documentary. I think it's going to happen. We just put it out there in the universe.
There's just,
thing. Yeah. So if you're a young filmmaker out there, we'd love to talk. And then, Allan, I think it behooves you to put it on Geeky Side TV, right?
Well, we've shot quite a bit of stuff with him, so we'll see what we can do.
So Scott J. Carroll may be writing up the script
might be a
right
little
now,
involved in this. So.
All right. Well, Mr. Robert, we love you. You'll never be forgotten. That's clear. So let's shift gears, though. Let's just tee this up, and then we're going to unpack it as we go. But, Brandon, you brought up something about really what a missed opportunity. I don't know if it's a missed opportunity or just a miscalculation, but
it's one of those situations where if people weren't balls to the wall, we got to get the next tentpole, we got the next blockbuster, we got to make a couple $1 billion on this next one. If they had slowed down and looked at what they had,
the MCU we're talking about
could have been a much richer place the last phase or two.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be that, but they basically. Did Endgame set records? I'm sure it did.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of blockbuster. Mostly people found it a satisfying wrap-up to the whole
I will
Infinity
tell you
saga.
that
I felt pretty good about it.
Endgame probably caused more dehydration than anything else I ever knew, because it's the only Marvel film I sat in where everybody around me was crying the whole time.
But it's not easy to do. They did something that's very difficult. They basically had a 10-year run of movies, and concluded it in, I would say, a pretty satisfying way. I watched Endgame a few months ago, and for me, it holds up. I thought it was really good, and it's emotional. And like you said, they had all of this goodwill, and they had all of these really tools at their disposal, and they kind of blew it. So we're going to talk about that when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Pee Wee Herman burned Max the Producer's fan letters. The Geek Patrol is back.
Is that in good taste, Max?
No, not
you
really.
Just keep bringing that up. All right, whatever. Max is such a, I don't know. Anyway, well, I have nothing to say. Welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my buddies Brandon Olmstead and Allan Gilbreth and the tasteless Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, we're going to talk about what we would consider a missed opportunity by the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Brandon, I want to just say, it behooves you to go back and listen. We have years and years. We're going on 8, almost 9 years of Geek Tank Radio. And I remember specifically when Infinity War ended, the next week we were on Geek Tank Radio and we said, you know what? If they do this right, Endgame could be one of the most compelling and interesting and really moving superhero movies of all time, because you just basically you just basically blipped away half of the creatures in the universe. What would the world look like if that actually happened? And they lean into it a little bit in Endgame, really not as much as I thought. But when the movie was over, now you have the blip and people come back. Well, that would literally throw the universe into upheaval, and they joke about it in Spider-Man: Far From Home. They kind of mention it in some movies, and why did they more or less almost ignore the blip? That is a massive plot, you know.
So you get a good focus on what's going on with the overpopulation, the returning population, so to speak. In what was it?
WandaVision touched on it.
No, it really didn't.
They did a little bit. They show it coming back.
No. They really don't do any of it in WandaVision. I just recently rewatched it. That is a very self-contained story. What you saw though was Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because the reason why that group is together is because they're trying to create a one world government that's going to take care of these people who've been displaced and everything else. It's the situation where you have a benevolent cause, but the way you go about it, you basically you're a terrorist. And every terror group thinks they're in the right when it comes down to it, and we get touched on that, but we never really see, other than like you see some of the refuges and the displacement houses and the tent cities, but you don't really focus on it very much because we're too busy worried about why isn't Sam picking up the shield? What's going on with Zemo? Hey, this new Captain America guy, we can't trust him. We're focused on all that because that's what they're putting up in your face, where you're seeing the background with all this stuff. And then the next time you really hear anything about it is when Cassie gets arrested she's been arrested at the beginning of Quantumania because she's part of a protest trying to get, relief for these folks who lost everything when they were gone for 5 years.
I dare say if they really wanted to be maybe taken serious as a studio, or at least just explore this in a new way, they could have had a basically a blip Fallout movie that wouldn't even hardly mention any of the superheroes. You could just say, this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this is what's going on right now.
It is that would have been
cool.
It is a massively missed opportunity that Disney Plus did not do some sort of miniseries that talked about stuff like that.
Right.
You could have focused on people like Darcy and Agent Wu and all these guys who we've seen in all these movies who are these auxiliary, normal, everyday characters, the sidekicks, the researchers, the this, that, and everything else. Pepper dealing with the fallout, from her side, because she's still running Stark Enterprises, which is going to be one of those companies that's expected to step up and help the world during this time. You could have done something along those lines, but they were so. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Kevin Feige, he screwed up.
They did. And
instead of taking that moment where you just had your giant, end game, set piece. rather than realizing that what helped build to the big villain was the slow burn. And you could have done slow burn stuff, but no, he was so busy throwing this in your face, so you keep paying attention, keep putting your money in, and it superhero fatigue set in because there's no character development, there's no drive, there's no nothing. The most interesting thing about what's going on post Endgame, nobody's paying attention to.
No, and I couldn't care less about the multiverse. I don't know. I know we talk about that, but it's like
Kang could have been a great villain if you didn't slap people in the face with him within 4 movies of that happening. I mean, when Loki came out, it was already, they were setting it up then. Loki came out a year, maybe a year and a half after Endgame?
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like it could have like we said, this could have been very thought-provoking movie. I mean, I don't know. And make it relevant. It could have been a very relevant conversation.
We talk about how poorly the DCEU was set up. It's like, man, with 3 movies in, we've already got our big Justice League thing. We got our Suicide Squad. We're throwing things at the wall, see if it sticks, and it didn't really work.
Yeah.
But Marvel did, rather than find a way to start building up to the Kang Dynasty thing or building up to whatever their next big villain was going to be, they didn't slow down, and nothing after the build to Thanos, nothing was going to be that interesting.
Well,
I mean, the Eternals, let's just talk about, let's say, Captain Suck and all of his team members.
Yeah, but Allan, you made a point. You said, okay, well, half the villains came back too. Well, there was a power vacuum during the blip, right?
Think about half of the agents disappeared. Half of the law enforcement disappeared. Half of, as Brandon said,
half the world
leaders.
All
of these characters disappeared. Well, what happened to the researchers? What happened to all these people? And yes, when they came back, and let's flip over to my favorite topic, the villains. You knew there was going to be some street-level throwdowns looking for all your street-level superheroes.
Sure.
Because, bad guy A don't want to give up everything he got from bad guy B for the last 5 years. There is a golden opportunity for all of your not galactic, tragedy characters. We're not destroying the world. We're worried about a neighborhood block. We had a little bit of street level, and then it went away.
Right.
You had this opportunity where we could have brought in any number of additional superheroes and villains.
Okay. We're going to continue the conversation, and hopefully we'll have some constructive criticism so we don't sound just like haters when we come back here on Geek Tank Radio.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Anyone who tells you it's impossible for a Tribble to wield nunchucks has obviously never seen the front end of Brandon Olmstead's car. The Geek Patrol is back.
I really wish people would stop trying to do Star Trek things in reference to me, because I hate Trek more than I hate you.
Oh, thank you.
No,
okay.
Wow. I don't hate Joe, though. That's the thing.
Okay. Anyway,
I do hate Tribbles.
Tribble-wielding nunchucks is the new name for my band.
Have you ever tried to get one out of the grill of your car?
Okay. I don't know.
It's impossible.
And they're not
There's still
good
pieces. I hit him 6 years ago.
And not only that, but like they repopulate so quickly, so you go to try to remove one, and you find 6.
Yeah, dude, my window washer reservoir doesn't even have water in it anymore. It's just fur.
Exactly. And Allan can't cook one of them. Too much fur. So.
No, that's not true. Teriyaki, baby.
Okay. I don't know how we got a minute out of that gag. Okay. But welcome back to Geek
Tribbles
Tank Radio,
cause rage,
everybody.
man.
Yeah. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Brandon Olmstead and Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass. And if you're just tuning in, well, we were saying goodbye to a good buddy, Mr. Robert, and we're not going to recap that, but we are going to, we'll in the months ahead, we'll talk about the tributes that we're going to be offering at the Memphis Comic and Fantasy Convention.
And if you'd like to talk with us, I'll be at ShadowCon next weekend. I'll be sitting behind that MCFC table, so come talk to me.
It's coming up. Gosh, ShadowCon. Okay, we ought to give a plug out for that. ShadowCon is coming up next Friday and Saturday. It's a 2-day event. Our buddy Cliff with the SCA runs that. And Brandon, do you have the location off the top? Because it's a new
It is the
new
Travelodge at give me 2 seconds.
Go to ShadowCon on Facebook or go to ShadowCon. It's 2 words. sort of. But it's a smaller convention. It's more what I call an intimate convention, but it's fun to be able to talk to your friends. So.
It is the Travelodge at 1471 East Brooks Road.
Okay.
That's where you'll find me. I'll probably be stuck in a corner somewhere, but there'll be a big MCFC banner behind me.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so we're talking about that. And then, of course, I don't remember if it's a week after, and then we'll have Anime Blues Winter Remix coming up. So we're kicking off 2024 right out of the gate.
Yeah.
There's action. There's geek action happening right away. But we were talking about also what we consider the missed opportunity by the MCU to not capitalize on the drama and all of the intrigue that would have happened as the result of the blip. I mean, Thanos gets rid of half the universe and then half the living creatures in the universe and then brings them back, or we get them back 5 years later. Well, there's all sorts of upheaval. We've been talking about that. But, Brandon, I need a clarifying question.
Okay.
Is it all the living creatures? In other words, were half the dogs, half the animals gone? Or is it just sentient, you could say, creature? I mean, dogs, you know what I'm saying.
You want to trigger me by talking about dogs not being sentient.
No, but
no,
who disappeared?
It was literally anything that consumed.
Okay, well, that's an ecological
because
thing. We're talking,
the whole point of removing half of the population using the gauntlet was to help keep supply in balance with demand.
Okay.
It was, you get rid of half the population, then your resources last longer.
Okay, but still, if you're talking about half the whales, half the whatever, well, that's a pretty big deal.
No.
Why
it's
did
a
they
huge
not? This
deal.
could have been not fun, but this could have been a super thought provoking.
Because when
if
it comes
you're
down to
an
it,
ecologist or somebody,
when it comes down to it, the anthropologists of the world out there are going to look at this question: what happens when you take all that stuff away? But your random, I'm going to get my name out there. I'm going to be the next big director. I'm going to be the next big writer. They don't give a damn about any of the actual fallout. They want to see Captain America punch something.
I guess, or they want to just create, and then now
they want to be the guy who has the epic fight scene. They want to be the next, Russo brothers, or and they're just. I hate to say it, but nobody who has made a Marvel film since Endgame, and I'm saying all of them, whether it be a Spidey Marvel film or a MCU one, nobody has touched the legacy that the Russos left behind, and that's because you don't have the build that they had.
Well, and they came along at the right time, too. I mean, you can't recreate the MC. I mean, if you start analyzing it too much, a lot of the movies or a lot of the premises are just very silly.
And the main reason, as much as I personally love stuff like What If and the various multiverse type stuff where you see, variants of various characters, it's a crutch so that when they realize, we can't do anything without Steve Rogers. Let's throw a ton of money at Chris Evans and get him back.
Right.
Well, and you also got to remember, it's basically a superhero is a one-trick pony.
Now you're triggering me, but go ahead, Allan.
Fundamentally, that's what we've discovered is when you reach the end of that storyline, you reach the end of what they've cared about. Now, what do you do with them?
I think,
I think
superheroes are a vehicle to tell great.
First of all, I think the biggest problem is that your writers and directors and all in Hollywood want to get as much mileage out of it doing the exact same thing, but they don't actually go to the source material and check out and see how these characters have evolved. You look at Tony Stark, he does the same thing in every one of the Iron Man movies, and he keeps doing the same thing up until the point where he has to play, mentor to Spider-Man, and then he shows a little bit of character growth, and that's it. And then he sacrifices himself in Endgame. But if you go back and read the comics, Tony had to reinvent himself multiple times because just because you have the technology now doesn't mean someone's not going to come back with more technology. He was your techno guy. Captain America was constantly having to re-envision what America, because we were an evolving species.
Right.
Our current government doesn't want us to be, but we are an evolving species, and so must our heroes. And we see that in the comics. But Hollywood wants it to be the same dang thing over and over and over again. And so you give them the same money you were willing to give for 4 stories back where Magneto still hasn't grown at all.
I think
I'm sorry. You know how I feel about these characters. I love these characters, and the Hollywood has screwed them up.
Well, they're not going to just throw the MCU in the garbage. If I just was
No,
giving
but
my
I'd toss
free
Kevin
advice,
Feige in there right now.
my free advice would be make fewer movies, humanize the stories a lot more, make it more about character growth, and don't make it a universe-ending scenario every time. Give us a street level, just story we can understand. You know,
Joe, you nailed it.
Give us the Ferris Bueller's Day Off of superhero movie. A one-day event.
One of the greatest
life
things that ever used to happen in the X-Men comics is that at least once every year or two, they played baseball and they hung out and they didn't have a villain.
Okay. Well, I guess we gave something positive at the end. Regardless, it is the end, you guys. We have to get out of here. So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Allan Gilbreth.
I'm Maximilian.
And I'm Brandon Olmstead on behalf of all of Geek Tank Radio, wishing you a Happy New Year.